Don't get me wrong, I love a good Beauty and the Beast-esque story. I also like the concept of love not necessarily having one look or feel to it, but this kind of sat on some lines that I was very uncomfortable with. Hi guys, it's April, and I'm going to do this review the same way I do all of my other reviews. I'm going to do the non-spoilery section up front, followed by the spoiled filled thoughts afterwards, in case you don't want to spoil yourself. But no judgment if you do decide to stick around, because sometimes I like to know what I'm getting into before I actually get into it. So, Love from the Other Side by NAGABE is a short story collection that takes a look at different types of love. This is the same creator as Girl from the Other Side, but this isn't necessarily tied to that. It's got a lot of the same themes of love being innocent and coming in all kinds of different kinds of shapes and forms, and there isn't one way for love to exist. This collection contains 6 different short stories that all investigate that kind of theme. It has NAGABE's very iconic art style. It's eerie and creepy, and it does contain gore. It's got this very monster-esque type feel to it, which is why I think this innocent type of love is explored in a lot of these stories and in The Girl from the Other Side. It kind of offsets the monstrousness that is going on in a lot of these stories. And I love the artwork, and I love that kind of dark, grittier feel to it. It's just that some of these stories touched lines that were very, very uncomfortable. A lot of times there was this weird power dynamic. One of the two in the pairing, because it always was about a pair, one of the two in the pairing always had more power than the other one, and the other one was always this innocent type being. And it wasn't always the human that was innocent in the stories. Sometimes it was the monstrous type creatures. But that power play in some of these stories didn't read very well. It left me in this place where I was questioning what was going on, because it does feel like there's some child grooming going on, a little bit of Stockholm syndrome in not the nicest of ways. And because of that power dynamic, it didn't feel like true love in some of the instances. These stories, I think, are meant to play off of innocent love and how childlike that is, and how there is no status quo or preconceived notions, and nothing fits into a mold, and that's okay because of that's how childlike the world views are in it. But because of that, you get into situations that, as a reader, as an adult reader, as a reader who's coming at this with everything I know that goes on in the world, some of these stories just didn't hit right. There are a couple that I did quite enjoy. It does take a look more at that childlike love, and I was more okay with those. It's the stories in here that starts leading more towards those romantic type of love that starts going to a place that I didn't necessarily want to touch. Like I said, I did like the nittier grittier parts of this and the aspect of innocent type love, but when you start mushing that innocent type love, that childlike love, into that romantic type love, that more adult type relationship aspects of love, that's where that line, that very uncomfortable line, starts to come into play. So I would go into this read knowing that there is a lot of uncomfortable undertones going on in a lot of these short stories. I do like some of the things that pretty much all of these stories were trying to get across. Those loners finding each other, those protectors, those beings that are changed by love. I like all of that, but it's when it shifts that I wanted to love this so much, because I love Girl from the Other Side. I love NAGABE's artwork. I love the grittier, harder pieces of this juxtaposed to the innocent type qualities that come out in these kind of stories in The Girl from the Other Side, all of this. But I couldn't get past some of those lines that just made me feel uncomfortable. So I can't give this as high as a recommendation as I really, really wanted to when I started reading this. It is an interesting read. I don't think it's a read for everybody. It's definitely more of a teen read, teen up, because a lot of the undertones would just make me feel very uncomfortable giving it to anybody younger than that. Even some teens I might feel a little weird about. I'm left with mixed feelings on this read. That's just kind of where I'm at. So this is the point in which I'm going to start getting into some spoilers about some of the short stories in this read. So if you don't want to spoil yourself, this is the point in which maybe go and pick it up and come back and we can start a conversation. Of course, let me know down below whether or not you are going to be picking this up. If you want to start a conversation with me later, I would absolutely love that. But now I am just going to start touching on a few things in a few of these stories. Now, See You Tomorrow, Daisy, I think was a great story to start out this short collection with because it was probably the most innocent of all of these stories. You just have a girl who's dealing with the sickness. She's befriended this giant raven, and I just like that. And so I thought these stories were all gonna have those kind of concepts. But then we got into Wolfman and Wolf Girl, and you had this man who was part wolf for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter, who apparently found this girl living with wolves at one point, decides to take her in and try to tame her, bring her back to her human aspects. He raises this girl and then turns around and asks her to marry him, but they're already mates anyways. And that's where that child grooming starts coming into play. That this is the second story in the collection, and that was the moment where I'm like, did we really just like hit that? Is that I was hoping the rest of it wasn't gonna go that way. And I mean it picked up a little better notes, sort of, because I mean the next one you have this bird-like creature who is raising a young girl technically for meat, but then decides that no, I've fallen in love with this girl as her caretaker, not necessarily that more romantic aspect, which I was very thankful for. And it's kind of hinting on some of, hey, we have pets. This is the same thing we do with pets. And so it did feel weird, but I kind of understood that a little bit more. I was still kind of stuck in this little space of child grooming that just happened. So it was nice when we got into the Midnight Waltz, where we've got this vampire who's kind of failing at being a vampire and doesn't really know it. And so everyone's just kind of being like, okay, let's convince him that he's human. And there's this girl who kind of knows everything that's going on, who's very much let me take care of you kind of thing. And I mean, even now talking about it, it hits a weird place because you're trying to convince somebody that there's something they're not. You're trying to hide an aspect of something from someone and convince them that's not there, which is just mean. And I know they're all doing it out of love, but it's still a little weird, I guess. And I think the White Kings, or the White King, is probably the one that started making me feel super uncomfortable, because you have this albino lion and you have this albino boy who have formed this friendship, and they start talking about love and babies. And it hit some notes of bestiality, I think. There was undertones of that. And that was probably me. I mean, like I said, I like the outcast finding each other, but it was probably my least favorite story out of this collection because of some of the undertones that started coming into play with the story. It was weird. I don't know. I'm just not going to touch that one anymore. And then the last story, we have Those Without Eyes. And this one is about a blind girl who has been taken in by this monstrous type creature. And she's kind of put two and two together. So she's contemplating escape. And then she does escape and she's attacked by wolves and saved, very much in the Disney Beauty and the Beast style. And she comes to realize that this creature wasn't necessarily keeping her there and eating humans. He was more of trying to protect from wolves, and it's just that those humans were taken by those wolves, and he was using their bodies to interact with this blind girl because he was just lonely. So like I said, there's some Stockholm Syndrome kind of stuff that always seems to happen in Beauty and the Beast type things. And that was probably the most gory story of the whole thing, because you had these decapitated and falling apart bodies. And maybe it's because I just, there's that very close connection to the Beauty and the Beast story that I didn't feel as uncomfortable with it, though there were notes of that Stockholm type quality. And in the same mind, I started justifying things like, well, where's she gonna go anyways? Because the whole village is gone and this beast just wants companionship, but he also took away a lot of choices for her in order to protect her. And she was living in constant fear, mainly because he couldn't communicate and she didn't know what was going on. And it was this whole great big mess. You see why I struggled a little bit with a lot of these stories and where NAGABE was trying to go with a lot of it. And I think it's because it plays with that horror gothic genre. And a lot of times that whole genre is littered with uncomfortableness. Still love the artwork. I'm just on the fence on the stories most of the time. It's a conversation starter for sure. I wanted to love it as much as I love Girl from the Other Side. It's just quite hit the same notes. It kind of went for a lot of those similar themes, but it didn't quite hit those same notes. So yeah, I guess I'll leave it there. That's all I've got to say. And of course, if you would like to keep up to date with every time I upload these reviews or anything else, subscribe down below, and I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.